The Royal Horticultural Society is a British establishment that has been in existence for more than 2 centuries. In 2017, they took on one of their most ambitious projects in decades in Salford, Greater Manchester, and transformed a derelict 154-acre grand old Victorian estate into one of the biggest gardens in Europe. It's taken 4 years and a monumental effort to create this garden, which is now a major attraction.
The intensity of stuff that we've been through, I can't imagine that anything will ever match it in quite the same way.
Since opening, the team now face new challenges to keep the garden on top form and ticking over all year round.
I have sleepless nights thinking, oh God, are they all going to be alive when I get back?
For many on the team, this is a new experience and a big adventure.
I hope I can swim. I was never very good at school. I never got my little duckling badge or anything.
Curator Marcus Chilton-Jones has seen the development of the garden from the beginning. And today, he's showing Bridgewater Ambassador Carol Klein around the garden.
What soil did you use here?
So when we'd stripped out the car park, we built a car park, we stockpiled all of the soil from there, and that's old agricultural chat moss stuff.
Yeah,
so it's really high organic matter content. Everything in here was rubbly. I mean, it was really poor. There'd been years and years of abuse, detritus, glass, plastic pots, you name it, it was in here. So we stripped all of that down to about 18 inches. Yeah. And then we built all the paths. So you had this floating path network with these big caverns.
It's phenomenal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Look at that selectrum. Look,
yeah, they're away.
Bigger than you. Oh, it's grand. Look at this. That's a natural, although it's a variety, it's a native verbena, isn't it?
Beautiful.
Isn't it just lovely? What a smashing plant. And this hydrangea paniculata, you've got a trial of these.
Yeah, we've got about 70 out the back, 3 of each. Hopefully, we'll be able to move them at the end of the trial. They'll be on site for about 4 or 5 years out into the woodlands.
AGM trials involve assessing how a particular plant performs against certain criteria, like disease resistance, yield, and reliability of flowering. The duration of the trial and the data collected varies according to the type of plant. Varieties that do well earn an AGM, which is an award of garden merit.
Look at the size of it. And look, that's Campanula lactiflora, isn't it? Laudanana?
All falling over as well at that
oh,
height.
But it's falling our way.
It is.
It's just,
the right
it's just perfect. It's absolutely beautiful. I mean, you must be thrilled to bits with the progress you've made.
Yeah, I mean, the growth in here is phenomenal, as you've seen. I mean, all of the geraniums spilling over the edges of the paths. And we've just had a couple of growing seasons.
Is everything going according?
Yeah, I mean, we keep pushing out from these 2 core gardens, the Paradise and the Kitchen Garden. So we've got the outer wall garden areas as well, which are coming together really well. Yeah. And then we've got a wider team who are pushing out through the woodlands, working on the Chinese Streamside Garden. We keep having to come back to the core principles of what we want the site to be, how we want it to look.
Which is what? What do you want the garden to do?
So we really want it to, A, sit in the context of the heritage, which is a tip, which is really celebrating all of the elements that make it special. The walls, the listed structures, the topography, the woodlands that are here. But it's also the biodiversity of the site, so making as many different habitats, garden habitats, but also wider countryside habitats on site as possible. And then, of course, the third ingredient is the people that come and enjoy it. You know, and today you can see there's hundreds. And that's who it's for? Of course, it's the local people, gardeners.
It wouldn't be here.
No.
Just as a garden on its own, it's for the people.
At every level, we knew that it was going to be something pretty awesome when we opened, and we haven't been disappointed. The public reaction has been overwhelmingly positive.
It's really nice, yeah, living in the centre of Manchester, you don't get anything like this, so it's lovely to come out and enjoy the peace and quiet. Getting inspiration.
We are getting
garden.
inspiration, yeah. So we'll get the ideas, and then we'll get Dad to sort it out. That's the plan.
Well, we were just saying the amount of employment opportunities it must have created for the local area. And I love the fact that Salford residents can come here for free.
I know absolutely nothing about plants at all. It's been a major education, if you like. It's been brilliant. Salford itself, you know, it's got its rich bits, it's got its poor bits, but I think this has become a major tourist attraction. It's therefore bringing money into the area, and I think it's put this part of Greater Manchester on the map, which I think is greatly deserved.
A significant part of the budget to build the garden was inevitably spent on new plants. But now that the garden is up and running, they can grow their own. Lisa Hudson is in charge of this mammoth task and raises around 20,000 plants each year. As if that wasn't challenging enough, she's also just taken on the responsibility of looking after a national collection.
So we've been deadheading pelargoniums last week, actually. My volunteer kindly did it for me because it was a heck of a job, bless him. And we're just trying to get them to put roots on instead of flowering, which they're not meant to be doing. So you see, it's starting to get there, but nowhere near enough to pot them on just yet. So hopefully by the time we get to June, they should be ready to go into their slightly larger pots and actually go outside for display.
So we have 300 different pelargoniums here, a wide range of certain types of pelargonium. So if you then consider how much I have to grow from that, 6 cuttings of each, suddenly you've got 2,000 cuttings of pelargoniums, and it's a bit of a stress point really in the year, trying to get that to grow and then trying to get that to flower. Some types of pelargoniums are more difficult than others. So we've got some regals, decoratives, and angels. Decoratives and regals are usually quite happy to grow. They're not too fussy. The angels, on the other hand, will keel over if you look at them wrong. So those ones have definitely been more challenging.
It's not just the pelargoniums that are facing challenges here. During the colossal construction phase, the local wildlife virtually disappeared. Now most of the building work is finished, and the garden has settled into a daily rhythm. Wildlife is returning. Barn owls have been spotted on the site, flying in and out of the newly built horticultural service yard. To encourage them and other birds to make their home there, Caroline Jones and her team are installing barn owl and kestrel boxes.
We're installing a barn owl box, hopefully encouraging a bit of breeding. I personally haven't seen one here yet, but we do have kestrels and they eat the same food source. So if you have kestrels, then realistically you should be able to get barn owls. So we are hoping that they will come. Barn owls are a medium-sized white bird, very quiet. They're sleek and slender, hunting predators. You don't normally see them, so if you do, it's a treat. I've got a licence to check barn owl boxes, to monitor them. Barn owls are a protected species, so yeah, you can't just go in and do it, you need to have a licence. So the barn owl during the day will be asleep in the box, and they're quite happy with noise around outside. It doesn't bother them at all. So we're going to put some sawdust in the base of the box. We do this so when the female lays the eggs will sit nicely on the base of the box and they won't roll to the side. We've had in the past where eggs have rolled to the side, the female can't bring them back, and then they don't get brooded, get cold, and they just don't hatch. So the idea of the sawdust is so they can make a little nest, like all the other birds make nests, and they can brood them and incubate the eggs properly. Mankind lately have been destroying all their habitats. We have the food source for them, but they don't have where to breed and nest. So we need to provide that for them these days, just so they can bring their numbers back up, give something back to the birds. They're not on the red or amber list anymore, but that is because of the barn owl boxes that have been made and monitored over the last few years. So they're now in a good place.
Probably the most recognisable building at the garden is the bothy, or specifically its chimney. It's been redundant for a long time and has suffered some wear and tear over the years. Projects manager John Pye and his team are doing some much-needed renovation works.
So we are 50 foot above the walled garden on the bothy chimney. We're needing to do some essential conservation repairs to the top of the chimney. So the top metre and a half, we could see from the drone footage that we got that it was actually starting to crack and deteriorate. So the risk is that you get loose stones that potentially could fall on visitors or staff. So a very much needed project to firstly deal with the health and safety issues, but more importantly, consolidate what is a listed structure for the next 100, 150 years. So the chimney was built in the 1870s. It's 30 years after the walled garden was actually built. The chimney is basically a big flue, so we had a coal-fired boiler in some subterranean basements, and that sent heat out into the glass houses that grew the year-round crops for the lord of the manor on his table. So it's a great bit of history. We thought we were the first people back up here in probably 150 years. But as the guys started to take the stonework down, we actually found a stone dated 1905. We suggest that there's been some remedial works in that 150-year period. This will be probably another month to 6 weeks before we finish, but we're on target, which is great news.
The team here are constantly looking at ways to attract visitors by offering a variety of garden-related events. Like this Pelargonium and Geranium Society National Show, where some of the country's best growers compete and show off their stunning blooms.
Having all these shows, makes a big difference in our knowledge of horticulture.
This was my little treat to you. She loves geraniums.
We like the odd, unusual little plant, and then we share them. So but we're both the same. We like the same thing, don't we?
Yeah.
Staff are also drawn to these events. Lisa has called in on a day off to compare her national collection of pelargoniums with these showstoppers.
Oh, they're fantastic. The standards are amazing. I only wish mine looked as good as these at the present moment.
Events are held throughout the year, but the biggest by far is Glow, a spectacular light show installation that will mark the first Christmas since the garden opened.
What we're really hoping is it's going to bring in lots of people who've not yet had the opportunity to come and visit. Perhaps people who don't think the garden's a place for them, or they're less interested in gardening, and we want them to be able to come and see what we're all about, and Glow's a really great way of getting them in for the first time.
The installation is about 700 to 800 light fittings, 10 to 12 kilometres of cable. It normally takes about a week to 10 days with a team of about 6 to 8 of us. It's obviously such a huge site, so we wanted to design a route with the events team to sort of cherry pick some key elements, so the walled garden, through the woodland and then up to the lake. We work quite closely with the RHS's wildlife experts to make sure that we minimise any impact to wildlife that live in the garden. That's a combination of designing the route to minimise the impact, but also to make sure that all the lights are connected to switches or time clocks to ensure that they all switch off after the event.
Once all the cables and lights are installed and tested, all that's left is to wait for the sun to set and for the show to begin. seeing the garden at night gives the visitors a completely different experience.
Absolutely fantastic.
Really?
Really is. It's so beautiful to have somewhere so close to where we live.
We're very lucky, aren't we, this evening, because we've got a full moon, so you've almost got that eerie mist around it. So it's been fabulous, yeah.
It's like having a different garden, because the atmosphere is beautiful at this time of year. It's just a different vibe.
Illuminating this huge site has been a big challenge, but it has paid off. The showpiece is the lake where the magnificent trees on its banks are lit and reflected on the water.
I really like seeing the lights reflecting in the river. It's just really beautiful.
You see the trees all lit up and the way that they reflect on the water, it's beautiful.
After the wonder of flow, the garden settles back to its daily routine. The lawns that are dotted all over the site need a lot of looking after. Steve Alterham is the man responsible for all things grass here, and his enthusiasm for lawns is only surpassed by his pursuit for perfection.
Nearly 2 years ago, we were still a building site. There was no grass. So we've come a long, long way in 2 years, and it's just amazing to see the end result. I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I'm my worst critique. So I look at my grass and people say, oh, your lawns are beautiful. But I think, well, actually, they're not quite where I'd want them. But I guess overall, I'm reasonably satisfied. I personally like the straight lines. I like to alternate different directions, so I'll never cut in the same direction 2 days on the row. So we can do straight up and down and across, and we call that checkerboarding, and that gives a lovely effect. And we can do a left to right, right to left, gives a diamond pattern. So I tend to be traditional in the way that I cut a lawn. How do I relax in the evening? Probably will come as a bit of a surprise to a lot of the people. I do kickboxing. I do that 3-4 times a week, and I find that that really relaxes me. People find mowing grass a little bit, repetitive. I don't see it like that. The challenge is always, to keep pristine your lawns. It's not just looking after the lawns, it's looking after the wildflower meadows that we have on site. And we're trying to encourage people to turn some of the stripy lawns over to kind of wildflower meadows. And that is also equally a challenge and one of my passions as well.
And he certainly doesn't adopt a keep off the grass policy. On the contrary.
It's lovely to get the visitors. This is what we've been preparing for the last goodness knows how many years. And you know what? I'm more than happy to see people running and over the lawns. That's what it's there for. It's for the public to not only look at, but to walk on, feel it, play on it, and it's there for their enjoyment. I absolutely love my job. I do. Yeah, there's not a day goes by where I still have to pinch myself. See my days out here if I can.
While the public admire and enjoy the results of Steve's hard work, Lisa is quietly getting on with her national collection of pelargoniums.
So today I'm doing a bit of potting of the pelargonium collection, since it's got to the end of June now. Probably should have done it a couple of weeks ago, but I've just had a holiday, so it's getting done now, whether they like it or not. Luckily, they're at a good stage. They've got a decent root system on them, so they should romp away once I actually get them into their new pots and into their new home. Now, the easiest way to tell if something's ready to pot in is to actually look at the roots. So as you can see from there, it's well rooted. They're quite forgiving in terms of, put them into a bigger pot. they'll quite happily put their roots down and carry on. We've had to chop their little flower heads off recently. So they had a thorough deadheading to try and encourage them to actually grow greenery rather than colourful. But hopefully once we get them in and let them actually have their heads, they should start flowering. Hopefully in the next 4 to 5 weeks. Fingers crossed. I'm quite content with my little kingdom. I quite like being in charge of it. My husband would probably tell you I'm quite bossy, so actually having somewhere that I can kind of control everything is really good for me. I don't mind working on my own most of the time, although I do tend to talk to myself after a while. So having a couple of volunteers come in a couple of days a week is really good because it gives me somebody to talk to. I try not to boss them around too much. They keep coming back, so I can't be that bad. But the collection as a whole is doing fairly well. I'm having to get replacements for a few things that did not come through the winter particularly well, mainly for the angels. Most of the regals, which is what I'm doing now, is the regals. They've come through it fairly well, because they're a little bit tougher. They don't mind a little bit of rough treatment or a little bit of cold. The angels, on the other hand, are delicate little creatures that do not like to survive. It is a bit of responsibility looking after these. Oh, generally just not trying to kill them. But is there any more responsibility than providing 20,000 plants for the garden? Not really. Do I like them? A little bit dependent on time of year, to be quite honest. When they're in full flower and they're outside and they're looking beautiful, then I think they're lovely plants. But yeah, when it comes to time when I'm taking cuttings and I've done, 1,600 and still going, no, I don't like them at all.
Lisa has been in the business of looking after plants for more than 14 years. The RHS run apprenticeships to bring on new talent. These fresh-faced newbies are arboriculture apprentice Gabriella and horticultural apprentices Tim, Max and Oshan are already showing considerable promise.
So we're just planting out this sort of herbaceous border, and then this Linissa is going in as a sort of shrubby element within that, getting an understanding for placement of plants in a design, and how groupings work together, potentially sort of grouping sort of 3s and 5s and spacing them in relation to the size of the plants. So it's working with the plant material, really.
So I'm just deadheading my calendulas at the moment. As you can see, there's quite a few flower buds waiting to come through. So the calendulas are entirely edible, as are the nasturtium flowers. You can just pick them and put them straight into your salad and eat them.
Today, we're just finishing off the deadheading of the dahlias. What you want to do is chop at the heel, because that's where the plant stores its auxins or its growth hormones. So, fingers crossed, once we've cut that back, we should get another flush of flowers. There's nothing to complain about, really. I mean, I do complain, but there is really nothing to complain about.
The apprentices' practical skills are really coming along, but today they face an entirely different challenge.
So the apprentices today got their first ident. So we've given them the challenge of 10 herbaceous perennials and 5 grasses that are in the gardens here. And what they'll need to go around and try and remember the way that we write plant names correctly, and they'll be asked to write down as many as they can recall. But this all contributes towards them getting their apprenticeship at the end of the 2 years.
Bit nervous, but kind of done my revision, so I know about 10 out of 15 of them, I think. But might change when I actually get in there.
Pretty confident, yeah. I know that they're all plants, so yeah, there we go. This will be 15 that we'll learn now, and we've got to learn 300 altogether. So, yeah, first step in a long, arduous process of learning 300 plants.
Obviously, it'll help to learn them bit by bit.
Yeah.
As we go along.
Whether after 2 years I'm going to remember Hylotelephium and my Dischampsia from my Calamagrostis, I don't know, but we'll see, won't we?
For me, any garden is a classroom. So for me, Bridgewater then, with its ecological diversity and its horticultural diversity, is just the most exciting classroom you can get, really.
I found it really quite hard to get my head around the spelling,
around the meanings. It took a lot of time to memorise what they were. And then you kind of built your confidence at being able to spot them, spell them correctly. The Latin was difficult to start with. As time progressed, I think after maybe a year, and certainly by the second year, I got a hang of it. But initially, it was quite difficult to get my head round.
I think there'll be a lot of organisational challenges. I mean, it's going to be quite intensive educationally, something that I'm not quite as used to. I think I'm going to enjoy it. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It's tough work, but it's ultimately some of the most satisfying work I can think to do.
I'm not as smart as some of the other apprentices. I've not got a master's, but I was welcomed in any way.
Plant IDs can be quite stressful and intense. You know, there's quite a lot to learn, isn't there? So when I was doing it, we even did things like shadows, so learning the forms of trees. I don't feel sorry for the apprentices at all. No, this is all part of the learning process, isn't it? They should embrace it.
After half an hour of intense concentration and head-scratching, the papers are handed in and the apprentices gather for a debrief while their efforts are marked.
Yeah. I mean, it's a test, isn't it? It wasn't too bad. It's just funny how your mind draws a blank and you can't remember the names of things that you've been learning the whole time. I don't think I had any trouble identifying anything, just actually remembering the name of things really more than anything, so.
Yeah, my trouble was the spelling. I feel very sorry for the person that's got to try and mark my test.
Yeah, no, I think it was okay. I think maybe I got a few of the sort of the cultivar, possibly tagged that to a genus that wasn't the right one, but otherwise, yeah, pretty good.
We just completed the marking and they've done really well. So they've got marks out of 28 because there were 14 samples they were given to test on. So yeah, they've all got sort of between 21 and 22. So that's really good, that's a pass.
While Max, Oshan and Tim celebrate passing a small but tricky hurdle in their apprenticeship, Caroline Jones and Dr. Steve Christmas are in the horticultural service yard. They haven't had any luck yet with the barn owl boxes. But they have had kestrels return to the site to build nests, but not where Caroline was hoping.
So we've put a kestrel box up in the eaves. We think the kestrels might have already found a nest before they found our box. They don't make their own nest like other birds. They use a nest of another bird, or in our case, they've used a squirrel dray. So there was a squirrel nesting just in the corner there. So there's a nice bit of bedding material for the kestrel. And we've got the kestrel nest there with 2 chicks in. So we're just going to ring the 2 birds that are in there. Steve is a licensed ringer. He's going to do the ringing for us.
The reason we ring them is to find out where they go to and how long they live, and how far from their breeding site that they disperse. So if anyone ever finds the ring or finds the bird, they'll report it back, and the national database has the data, so the finder gets informed and so does the ringer. And then we put an individually numbered ring on each bird, together with an address and a web address, so if anybody finds it, then they can report to us where and when they've found it. And these birds are about half grown, so they can easily take a ring. They've still got the down feathers on, but the wing feathers are just coming through. So probably about 3 weeks old, I think. They do tend to squawk a bit, but they're not in distress at all. It's like a wristwatch, so it doesn't rub on the leg or squeeze the leg at all. The kestrel population is declining, unfortunately. Yeah, it's on the amber list. That means the numbers have dropped over the last 20 years. Most birds of prey are under threat because of habitat change and climate change and decreasing food supplies. So we're just monitoring them to see how the numbers maintain, what the population levels are. This year's been a very good vole year. Voles make up about 80% of their diet. So as long as there's good vole habitat, then that will be fine. There's plenty of good habitat around here. Plenty of fields with grassy edges and tussocks that's not mown too regularly. So it's ideal habitat for the voles.
We're very pleased that we just have a pair of kestrels in their own nest site. It doesn't really matter where they are, it's just nice to get some and to ring them, so then we can keep track of them in the future. It's lovely. And weren't they cute?
The site the garden now occupies started its life more than 180 years ago. The first Earl of Ellesmere, who made his money from coal and the canals that distributed it around the country, built a magnificent 154-acre estate. Worsley New Hall, on the outskirts of Manchester. The estate was so important that Queen Victoria visited it twice. It had magnificent terraced gardens, woodlands, a huge lake, and an 11-acre walled garden. Although the grand house is long gone, there are still plenty of remnants of the old estate to remind visitors of its former glory and the lives of the people that once worked and lived here. Dr. Mike Novell has been documenting the history of this site since 2011 and has witnessed the transformation into its new life.
The bothy behind me is built in the 1840s and 50s. It's the real heart of the kitchen garden because that's where most of the gardeners would live. They're the under-gardeners, the trainee gardeners. And we're looking at least a dozen people in the mid-19th century living in that bothy. So they get up early in the morning, they're immediately at work, they're working dawn till dusk, they're ruled by the seasons, and they're working hard as well. So they're the people behind the scenes that allow the Earl of Ellesmere's family to sit down to a wonderful array of produce. What it's being used for now is a sort of base for the gardeners for the RHS. It's similar to that in the 19th century. I imagine they're not working dawn till dusk. And I don't think they're sleeping in there. But it is still the hub of the garden. And so there's a really nice continuity from my point of view as a landscape archaeologist between what went on in the 19th century and what the RHS are trying to do in the 21st century. This is the head gardener's cottage. It's a real contrast to the bothy over there. This is more elaborate, although it's built at the same time, designed by the same architect. So this is where the head gardener and his family would live. The design reflects, I suppose, the status of the gardener in charge of the walled garden here. It also is a sort of separation between the head gardener and his workers. So whilst he's a working chap, he has an important part to play, not just in overseeing the growing of the fruit and the flowers, but also in the more formal design of the garden, which makes him very important. And you can see that in some of the documentation in the early 1920s, when he's writing to the family, saying, what do you want me to do about this year's planting scheme, this year's crops? He gets quite a dusty response, but he's in that important role where he can talk directly to the family.
The old head gardener's cottage, where William Upjohn and his family lived, is strategically positioned in the 11-acre walled garden, and within this space is the new 2-acre kitchen garden.
So the kitchen garden here is quite interesting because it wasn't originally the kitchen garden. That's in the walled garden originally in the 1840s, 50s over there. So this is an area for growing young tree saplings for the wider estate. So it's had a complete change of use here in the 21st century. But one of the things I do like is growing food for the local estate, not for the Ellesmere here, but in this case, for the Welcome Building over there. Food metres, not food kilometres, so food yards, not food miles. But in the 19th century, you'd have been able to see the Worsley New Hall for the Earls of Ellesmere on the horizon there, again, from the kitchen gardens. I love how we've kept that sort of landscape fixture here.
In the Earl of Ellesmere's time, the terraces up by the house would have been the showy centrepiece of the estate. But now, that role is taken on by the Paradise Garden.
To have a paradise garden here is amazing because in the 19th century, This would have been a hive of activity, so this is where all the fruits and the vegetables are grown. But it is nice that you've got an echo of some of the fruit houses over in the far side of the walled garden with those glass houses there, because we know they were growing grapes, we know they were growing peaches within this area here. But this was very much a functioning garden to provide for the table of the Ellesmere family. It had to be neat, it had to be tidy. This would have been properly planned. Each time this landscape is reworked, and this is the sort of fourth time that this landscape has been reworked in the last 500 years, it's done for the needs of the time. So here we're looking at the RHS thinking about how we all live with nature in the early 21st century. I think that's absolutely appropriate.
It's well known that gardening has huge benefits for physical and mental well-being. The team are keen to promote these benefits, so they've created a space where people from the local area can come and garden. Azichi Brewster is in charge of the Wellbeing Garden.
I'm the therapeutic gardener. Because this is a new garden, there was a lot of opportunity to actually look at the area and the community to understand health issues and health matters within Salford. And for that reason, we were able to discover that there was a place for using gardening and green care to support people's physical and mental and emotional health.
Right, what we're doing, this is sweet Sicily here. If it's dry, it does break off easily, like that. So if you wanted, if that was easier for you, you can do that. Yeah, like that. Yeah, that's okay.
Today, Azichi is joined by one of her regular groups.
I've had a very rare gyno cancer, very rare indeed, and I don't work anymore, I have limited mobility issues. I'm absolutely obsessed with anything flowery. I love flowers, but I've never actually gardened, ever, because I just thought, oh, it's too difficult, I won't know what I'm doing. I've learned quite a lot. It's made me like really relaxed. Even though I thought it'd be physically hard, the gardeners here adapt everything to your condition and side effects. I just think, having gone through cancer and obviously the physical trauma and everything's been in a clinical environment for a long time, I think it's nice to do something in a non-clinical, natural environment where it makes you forget about being ill. It's helped me speak to other cancer patients to swap ideas on how to improve our lives and keep going. I think motivation is the biggest thing.
Those are our favourite.
Those, yeah. Those are easy ones to spot.
Pretty.
Yeah. That's a proper weed.
I took early retirement from working for 40 years with the local council for family circumstances. And then when that changed, I had absolutely nothing that I wanted to do or felt I could do. I lost a lot of confidence. And to build that back up again, I joined the Wellbeing Gardening. Whatever problems you've got or worries, they're left in the car park and you can just walk in and you feel like you're just walking on air.
And it's a big thing when you start work and you lose your friends from there. And I just think it's helped me really a lot. So it gives us a purpose, to come every week and try and help and meet people. And then afterwards we go and have a coffee or something, have a chat, and we made a lot of friends.
It's our happy space now.
It is, yeah.
I'm here because in 2013 I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And if you've got things on your mind, you just get lost in the garden if you want to. Or you can chat with people and lose yourself that way. Or you can just go and meditate or just
think about where you are and the environment you're in. You know, it's very, to me, it's very calming.
It is a way of gently assisting somebody to find themselves again or to feel better. As a job, I like supporting people, and using plants and using nature to do that is such a privilege.
Azichi is lovely, and she does some amazing sessions here with people. She's just, yeah, she's really, really a lovely person.
She doesn't make you feel afraid to have a go and maybe get it wrong. And she helps you learn new skills very quickly. And I think that in itself makes people feel confident.
You can measure the success of it in that you see the person that has been coming for a few weeks thriving. You see a change in them. The general feedback is thank you for what you're doing here. So that's also taken me by surprise. I don't think I've worked in another job where people have thanked me and my colleagues so much for what's being created here.
While Azichi and her group reap the benefits of gardening, Caroline has been checking the barn owl boxes and the kestrel chicks.
Unfortunately, we didn't get any takers into the bird boxes this year. We think we put them up just slightly too late because we're a new site. We hope they've found them though, so next year we should get a kestrel and hopefully a barn owl nesting in our boxes. Kestrel chicks are really good. After the ringing, they fledged. They were scuttling along the floor, finding some higher ground to try and get out into the woods. They did manage it. They were a couple of days apart because the older chick is about 2 or 3 days older than the younger chick. So that was flying up high in the trees, and the little baby was still here, couldn't fly. So that was quite funny to see the difference. But before the youngest one fledged, I did manage to get some pictures before it was flying. And it's just sat on a pallet just over there, sunbathing for all of one day, and lots of us were taking pictures of it, and it wasn't bothered at all. Once they fledge, they will stay together for a couple of weeks. They do need to learn to hunt, and it does take quite a long time. They were coming back here every day, so they probably even roosted here at night. I haven't seen them personally myself this last week or two, but it wouldn't surprise me if they are still close.
Along with the kestrels making themselves at home, plenty of other birds have been busy building nests around the site. And some have been choosing an unusual location.
So this is the plant centre, and believe it or not, we think we've got more birds' nests in here, because it's a secure area, than we have in the wall garden. I'm going to show you a couple of nests we've got at the moment. So in this bush here, we've got a goldfinch nest. They've got 4 eggs, and we had to just cordon it off because we didn't want any public to buy a plant and walk off and go home with a bird's nest. They're not disturbed at all. I could go right up to that now and peer in because I know where he is, and he'll stare at me for a bit, but then I'll walk away because I don't want to disturb him either. And then over here, we've got a robin nest in that box. They've got 4 chicks already hatched. And the robin lands on the fence and goes through that little hole. So again, we had to put a sign on because we don't want our visitors to disturb the box, but we also don't want our volunteers that water all the plants, we don't want them to water the birds either. So we've got pied wagtail nesting in a conifer display, and you can see it quite clearly because there is quite a gap for you to see the nest and the mother bird on the eggs. There's 5 eggs in there, and that should hatch any day. They've been there 2 weeks already. They did nest last year as well, before we opened. So no, I think they already know it's a good place to nest. Because of the area we've got, it's all fenced off. It's very secure here. We don't have any cats or predators. They know they're safe here, so that's why we've got an abundance of nests. Your contact with nature, you just can't beat it, I don't think, just being so close to wildlife. I mean, members of the public go past these and they've got no idea what's in some of these bushes. And the birds don't mind. You can walk within a metre of a bird's nest with chicks in, and it's wonderful.
Lisa has been nurturing her national collection of pelargoniums in the greenhouse for months, waiting for the weather to warm so they can be put out on display, and today is their big day.
Today we're putting out the angel-type pelargoniums. The regals and decoratives went out the other day. I kept these ones back because these are obviously taking a little bit longer to get their feet in, but they seem to have settled in quite nicely. We've given them some seaweed, so that always helps green them up. So yeah, putting them out on display, getting them out in a bit of sunshine, doing a bit of good. Right, these ones are ready to go. National Collection is, as the name would suggest, it's a collection of a particular genus of plants. The point of having a national collection is pretty much to actually keep the cultivars, because a lot of them are not what you would consider commercially viable, particularly things like these angels, darlings that they are. A lot of people won't grow them at home because you do have to look after them in a very particular way. They can be somewhat fussy. We don't want to lose a lot of these cultivars, some of which are very old. So rather than end up losing them, you put them into a collection, give them to a collection holder, and basically make it their responsibility instead, just to keep them all alive. All my collections outside are labelled. We do keep everything in alphabetical order. This is done for a very good reason, because as I did find last year when they went out on display, quite often you would just find labels strewn on the floor, because obviously people like to have a look and find out what things are, which is fine, because they want to know, they might want to go and buy them in the plant centre, so that's fantastic. But they're not always so good at actually getting the labels back in the pots. So yeah, we basically put them out according to type and then in alphabetical order. So I've got records, because the last thing we want is to actually lose track of what plants are, because it makes it a lot more difficult to take cuttings if you're not sure what you're actually taking cuttings of. So yeah, it's all out and organised. I like organised.
Bridgewater relies on an army of volunteers to keep it going. They have garden volunteers, welcome building volunteers, cafe volunteers.
Right, I'm going to get into position, guys. All right?
And then there's Elaine, a volunteer tour guide.
Good morning and a very, very warm welcome to you all to our...
You have to engage your inner child and you have to make it fun for people, put on a bit of a show. I think that's the trick of tour guiding.
I'll put that on the feedback. Maple car wanted by one of my guests. I know.
I was really enthusiastic when I heard that the RHS were looking for volunteer tour guides. And I thought this is right down my alley because I can talk the hind legs off a donkey. I took early retirement and I was a primary school teacher. And I thought that my skill set would be perfect for engaging with our guests here in the garden.
For those horticulturalists amongst you, do you know what I mean by Mecanopsis? Yes, the blue. Yes, they were here on this bank and they were so vivid.
Meeting different people on a daily basis is what gets me up to come out and to put on my purple uniform and to come here.
So where's the house, Elaine? The house, ladies and gentlemen, would have been at the highest point that you can visualise over the terraces there, right at the very top.
The most interesting parts for me is the unknown. It's who are your guests, where are they going to be from, what are their interests going to be?
Does somebody's verbena look like this at home? No. I've got one as well. My husband thought it was a thistle and cut it down. I know. What can you do? Come on through.
I think the most challenging element for me is the fact that I'm not a horticulturalist and I don't pretend to be.
I learnt about this last week. It's chicory. It's chicory. I had to find out because one of my guests wanted to know what it was and it's chicory.
You can bet your bottom dollar that at some point when there's a gorgeous, I'll give you one, cosmos, comes into view, they'll say, oh, Elaine, what's this plant? I've no idea. Anybody else help me out?
There's over 6 kilometres of wires that have gone back onto these walls. And these intricate shapes where the fruits are going to be trained up against the wall, just as they would have done in the Victorian heyday. And already they're taking the shape on the wires. And please notice the bow in it. English Heritage wanted us to retain this wonky-donkey nature of the wall.
The piece de resistance is the Paradise Garden. The Paradise Garden is the only one that has the 4 high walls. And there is definitely a different feel when you enter the garden. So what I tend to do, I tend to be a little bit dramatic, but I tend not to talk. Because when you come through the centre space there, you're faced with a 70 square metre lily pool. And it gets you, it really does get you. So the feelings when I come to this place, I get fulfilment. I have a purpose and I feel appreciated.
So cosmetic.
She's got a professorial air about her, but in a down-to-earth way. So I really like that.
She kept everything, for the layman to understand. It wasn't too complicated.
It's lovely that you've got people like that who volunteer, because without it, it wouldn't be half the thing that it is, and her enthusiasm really, really comes across.
It was fun. It was interesting. Yeah, she told us to put our imagination hats on, and then she helped us to really imagine it.
As soon as she said that, I thought she must be some form of teacher, and my wife's a retired primary school teacher, and I think, it showed through that she was able to communicate really well.
Somebody did ask me just now, did I swat up for you guys this morning? And I said, no, I'll stop myself from doing that. If I don't know what I'm talking about now, God help me. Thank you. Cut.
During the build, the garden team needed to get the plants into the ground as soon as possible, to give them the chance to establish and flourish for the grand opening in May 2021. 2 years on, the plants are now established enough to be used for an important environmental survey.
Today, me and the rest of the team were going around all areas of the garden, and we are counting the number of flowering plants on the summer solstice. So we're looking at the genus, the species and the cultivar, and then it will be a record throughout the seasons, throughout the years, and then we can come back to it year on year and look if there's any changes. And particularly, with our changing climate, we'll be able to see if this is affecting the flowering seasons of plants as well.
It's really nice to look back on all the areas that were planted up and actually spend time to reconnect with the garden.
Now in this bed, I'm just noting down that we've got the salvia and we've got the vivascum flowering. So I'm making a note of this down on the plan, which will then get transferred onto the spreadsheet. So while we're here, it's also a really good opportunity to take a closer look at the plant, so we can look for signs of any pest issues or health issues, and note these down at the same time. It's really important that we carry out this flowering count because we want to keep a record year on year of when a particular cultivar flowers, if there's any changes to it, because then this could change, the pollination window. It could also change when nectar is available for insects as well. We're then able to build up this really valuable bank of data. We're looking at absolutely everything, whether it be a tree, a herbaceous perennial, or a grass. It doesn't matter how big or small the flower is, it's getting counted on our database. When we're doing this count, we're not really looking at the performance of the plant. We're not looking at how many flowers, how many blooms it produces. We're more looking at just whether it is flowering at this particular day in the year. we can actually like look at trends. Is that a knock-on effect from our changing climate? Is that affecting the flowering seasons of all the different taxa, all the different plants that we have in the garden?
The walled gardens are flourishing. But there's a huge area of the site that at the moment the public aren't able to see.
So we're on the site of Worsley New Hall, which was the residence of the Earls of Ellesmere. This is the start of the garden. This is where it all began. It's got amazing views out across the Cheshire Plain. This is the epicentre of the site in many ways. But up here, there's something almost as big and complex waiting in the wings for the future for us. So eventually, this will act as a second horticultural hub for the site, so that you've got the main honey pot of the walled garden. This will become honey pot number 2. Now, quite what the ingredients, the components of this space will be, there's a lot of meetings and a lot of discussion and a lot of planning to go through. And obviously, originally, the whole site was like this. It was just potential and chat and planning and thinking about the future. The world is our oyster in a lot of ways, but it's a big old piece of land to chew off. The time scale is the really interesting point. I mean, we certainly talk about 3 and 5 and 10 years. No one ever talks much beyond that. But of course, when the Ellesmeres first developed this site, they did it over 50 or 60 years. So you have to see yourself as a link in a long chain that just goes into the future. And you hope that the links don't break down and that you hand on the baton and then they hand on the baton and that goes on and on and on. And slowly, incrementally, these landscapes and these sites improve. And we should hand on a legacy and inheritance to the future that people around here can be immensely proud of.
As the garden moves forward, the team reflect on their time here.
It's been a real journey. I don't think in my lifetime I'll never get another opportunity to work on a project like Bridgewater.
It's always that last 10%. So, yeah, I'm going to create the perfect lawn here. Watch this space.
I feel like I've learned a lot. I feel like I know what I'm doing. Definitely think I've chose the right career.
There's a lot that I don't understand about the world, but I do understand bulbs and shrubs and dirt.
So I think what I've found in horticulture is a job which I can see myself doing for the rest of my life.
It makes getting up at 5 in the morning a lot easier if you can come to work at a place like this.
I'll try and carry on for as long as I can physically, you know what I mean, as long as age will let me do it. I hope I can be at it for a few more years just yet.
I feel really privileged seeing how people are responding and reacting and enjoying the space and feeling really grateful that they have something like this near where they live.
No, I definitely don't want to be curator. That involves too many meetings and not enough horticulture.
If I could have a crystal ball, late teens, and stare into it and look into the future, I would have definitely have been surprised, I think, that I'd ended up in a magnificent garden doing the job that I do.
Results of Steve's hard work, Lisa is quietly getting on with her national collection of pelargoniums.
So today I'm doing a bit of potting of the pelargonium collection. Since it's got to the end of June, I probably should have done it a couple of weeks ago, but I've just had a holiday, so it's getting done now, whether they like it or not. Luckily, they're at a good stage. They've got a decent root system on them, so they should romp away once I actually get them into their new pots and into their new home. Now, the easiest way to tell if something's ready to pot in is to actually look at the roots. So as you can see from there, it's well rooted. They're quite forgiving in terms of, put them into a bigger pot. They'll quite happily put their roots down and carry on. But we've had to chopped their little flower heads off recently. So they had a thorough deadheading to try and encourage them to actually grow greenery rather than... Do I like them? A little bit dependent on time of year, to be quite honest. When they're in full flower and they're outside and they're looking beautiful, then I think they're lovely plants. But yeah, when it comes to time when I'm taking cuttings and I've done, 1,600 and still going, no, I don't like them at all.
Lisa has been in the business of looking after plants for more than 14 years. The RHS run apprenticeships to bring on new talent. These fresh-faced newbies are arboriculture apprentice Gabriella and horticultural apprentices Tim, Max and Oshan are already showing considerable promise.
So we're just planting out this sort of herbaceous border, and then this Lanista is going in as a sort of shrubby element within that, getting an understanding for placement of plants in a design, and how groupings work together, potentially sort of grouping sort of 3s and 5s and spacing them in relation to the size of the plants. So it's working with the plant material, really.
So I'm just deadheading my calendulas at the moment. As you can see, there's quite a few flower buds waiting to come through. So the calendulas are entirely edible, as are the nasturtium flowers. You can just pick them and put them straight into your salad and eat them.
Today, we're just finishing off the deadheading of the dahlias. What you want to do is chop at the heel, because that's where the plant stores its auxins or its growth hormones. So, fingers...
Wasito anato, wasimahihita, wasikanihika, inimakikuka, isemalemita, watasiganato, imasikapisha, osiguadikito. Nakura, poko paka poka, muboko, no, kami kami, watashi, tonato, mukeki, washago no, kijunamu kamagi masikada, watashi ga anato ga mokima abisi, nokima lana, niga kujo mogo, nibasida koma, mezina.
It's just the most exciting classroom you can get, really.
I found it really quite hard to get my head around the spelling, around the meanings. It took a lot of time to memorise what they were. And then you kind of built your confidence at being able to spot them, spell them correctly. The Latin was difficult to start with. As time progressed, I think after maybe a year, and certainly by the second year, I got a hang of it, but initially it was quite difficult to get my head round.
I think there'll be a lot of organisational challenges. I mean, it's going to be quite intensive educationally, something that I'm not quite as used to. I think I'm going to enjoy it. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It's tough work, but it's ultimately some of the most satisfying work I can think to do.
I'm not as smart as some of the other apprentices. I've not got a master's, but I was welcomed in anyway.
Plant IDs can be quite stressful and intense. You know, there's quite a lot to learn, isn't there? So when I was doing it, we even did things like shadows, so learning the forms of trees. I don't feel sorry for the apprentices at all. No, this is all part of the learning process, isn't it? They should embrace it.
After half an hour of intense concentration and head-scratching, the papers are handed in and the apprentices gather for a debrief while their efforts are marked.
Yeah. I mean, it's a test, isn't it? It wasn't too bad. It's just funny how your mind draws a blank and you can't remember the names of things that you've been learning the whole time. I don't think I had any trouble identifying anything, just actually remembering the name of things really more than anything, so.
Yeah, my trouble was the spelling. I feel very sorry for the person that's got to try and mark my test.
Yeah, no, I think it was okay. I think maybe I got a few of the sort of the cultivar, possibly tagged that to a genus that wasn't the right one, but otherwise, yeah, pretty good.
We've just completed the marking. They've done really well. So they've got marks out of 28 because there were 14 samples they were given to test on. So yeah, they've all got sort of between 21 and 22. So that's really good. That's a pass.
While Max, Oshan and Tim celebrate passing a small but tricky hurdle in their apprenticeship, Caroline Jones and Dr. Steve Christmas are in the horticultural service yard. They haven't had any luck yet with the barn owl boxers. But they have had kestrels return to the site to build nests, but not where Caroline was hoping.
So we've put a kestrel box up in the eaves. We think the kestrels might have already found a nest before they found our box. They don't make their own nest like other birds. They use a nest of another bird, or in our case, they've used a squirrel tray. So there was a squirrel nesting just in the corner there. So there's a nice bit of bedding material for the kestrel. And we've got the kestrel nest there with 2 chicks in. So we're just going to ring the 2 birds that are in there. Steve is a licensed ringer. He's going to do the ringing for us.
The reason we ring them is to find out where they go to and how long they live, and how far from their breeding site that they disperse. So if anyone ever finds the ring or finds the bird, they'll report it back, and the national database has the data, so the finder gets informed, and so does the ringer. And then we put an individually numbered ring on each bird, together with an address and a web address, so if anybody finds it, then they can report to us where and when they've found it. And these birds are about half grown, so they can easily take a ring. They've still got the down feathers on, but the wing feathers are just coming through. So they're probably about 3 weeks old, I think. They do tend to squawk a bit, but they're not in distress at all. It's like a wristwatch, so it doesn't rub on the leg or squeeze the leg at all. The kestrel population is declining, unfortunately. Yeah, it's on the amber list. That means the numbers have dropped over the last 20 years. Most birds of prey are under threat because of habitat change and climate change and decreasing food supplies. So we're just monitoring them to see how the numbers maintain, what the population levels are. This year's been a very good vole year. Voles make up about 80% of their diet. So as long as there's good vole habitat, then that will be fine. There's plenty of good habitat around here. Plenty of fields with grassy edges and tussocks that's not mown too regularly. So that's ideal habitat for the voles.
We're very pleased that we just have a pair of kestrels in their own nest site. It doesn't really matter where they are, it's just nice to get some and to ring them, so then we can keep track of them in the future. It's lovely. And weren't they cute?